In 1915, 50 years after the end of the Civil War, D.W. Griffith released his epic film Birth of a Nation. The greatest blockbuster of the silent era, Birth of a Nation was seen by an estimated 200 million Americans by 1946. Based on a novel by a Baptist preacher named Thomas Dixon, the film painted Reconstruction, the period following the Civil War, as a time when vengeful former slaves, opportunistic white scallywags, and corrupt Yankee carpetbaggers plundered and oppressed the former Confederacy until respectable white Southerners rose up and restored order. A scallywag was a Southern white who supported the Republican Party. A carpetbagger was a Northern-born Republican who had migrated to the South. The film depicted a vindictive Northern congressman, modeled on the Pennsylvania Republican Thaddeus Stevens, and a power-hungry mulatto eager to marry the congressman's daughter. The film's hero is an aristocratic Confederate veteran who joined the Ku Klux Klan at the film's climax, rescues the woman from armed freedmen, former slaves. President Wilson, viewing this film in 1915, reportedly described the film as, quote, history written with lightning, unquote. During the 20th century, far more Americans learned about Reconstruction from films like The Birth of a Nation and films like Gone with the Wind, which depicted Reconstruction as a misguided attempt to overturn the South's quote-unquote natural order by giving political rights to former slaves. Even though the Confederacy lost the Civil War, it succeeded in the late 19th century and early 20th century in winning the ideological war that determined how Americans viewed the Civil War era. For most of the 20th century, the dominant view of Reconstruction, repeated in many high school and college textbooks, was that it was a period of bayonet rule, during which vindictive Northern carpetbaggers and white and black puppets engaged in an orgy of corruption and misrule. According to this view, a courageous President Johnson, seeking to carry out Lincoln's policies of reconciliation, was confronted by a hostile Congress trying to punish the defeated South. In recent years, this interpretation of Reconstruction has been thoroughly dismantled. It is now clear that Reconstruction was a failed but admirable attempt to adjust to the realities of emancipation, to guarantee civil rights and political rights of former slaves and forge a more just society out of the ruins of slavery. President Johnson's Reconstruction policy, far from being a continuation of Lincoln's, was steadfastly opposed to protecting the rights of African Americans. Reconstruction was the most daring experiment in American history. It represented an attempt to transform the institutions and patterns of social relations of the Old South. It gave Black Americans in the South their first taste of political power. Out of Reconstruction came constitutional amendments that extended citizenship and voting rights for African Americans. This era also witnessed the federal government's first effort to create social welfare programs. In the end, Reconstruction failed to establish a less racially divided society. It failed, doomed South to decades of relative economic underdevelopment and ensured that the South would be dominated by a single political party. It also left an entire country with unfinished task of achieving full economic and political equality for the descendants of slaves.